Hey everybody, Brandon here. Welcome back to another episode of the Road to Chess Mastery. Today we're going to be covering Game 5, and this is tournament number 8, as mentioned before in previous videos. But, okay, I am currently at an even score. I have 2 out of 4, I won 2 games, and I lost 2 games. And now I am playing against Atharva again. Who I have played, I believe, 2 games against in the past. And you can see on the scoreboard our current score versus each other. These scores right beside the pawns, if you're curious. And now it is time to rematch. And I am playing with the black pieces. And let's see how the game progresses. Now, just be prepared. This is a wild one. E4, C5, knight to c3, and knight c6. So I'm going to be playing against the Grand Prix here. We see f4, g6. This is actually something I have prepared against just a little bit at this point. We see bishop b5, knight to d4, d3. And I was actually pretty happy to see d3 because I can take the bishop and play a6, and I get a free move on my opponent. After knight to c3, I played bishop to g7, and after bishop g7, knight to f3, e6, castles, and knight to e7. So now I'm just trying to bring this knight to c6 and even possibly play d5 immediately. One interesting option for them might be to play e5 themselves, but after d6, I can somewhat break down their structure. So that's always an option. But okay, knight e7, queen to e1. Now we can see the thematic ideas of the Grand Prix for white. They'll often want to bring their queen out to h4, play knight g5 and f5, sacrifice a pawn for a huge initiative against our king. But I do not allow this. I played castles, queen h4, and d5. When they attack on the flank, you attack where? In the center. And this is exactly what I do. a3, b5, and f5. So this is very scary. Now there's ideas of knight g5 or bishop h6 and then knight to g5 where they're threatening to take on h7. But we'll see in the game what exactly happens with that. So I take on f5. They go bishop h6. And, well, this is a little scary. What should I do? I can try something like knight c6, but after knight c6 there's knight g5. So what exactly should I do here? I decided to take on e4, and I think this is okay. This isn't so bad, but this is getting to be a very scary position. Either my opponent's going to mate me, or I'm going to be up a little bit of material, and maybe I'll win. Who knows? But what happens here? Knight g5? Okay, so there's only realistically one move to defend. Knight f5. Isn't my opponent winning here? Aren't they? Rook takes f5. And this is what my opponent plays. This is the best move in the position, sacrificing the exchange, but it's not quite a sacrifice of an exchange because after bishop takes, and king takes, well, this queen takes h7. And this is exactly what happens, and there's only one move for me. This is a very scary position, but realistically I have to play it. King f6. Now, I have no idea what's going on here. Neither does my opponent. We are just trying to figure this out. Now, turns out this is okay. This is okay for both sides. You could argue that white has a slight advantage because look at their position. But you could also argue that maybe I have a slight advantage because I'm up 3 points of material. It's actually very hard to tell. Moves like rook h8, which you really want to play, just don't work because f7 is undefended here. But okay, they take on e4. They're trying to open up lines, and this is exactly what they should be doing. Taking on g5 is tempting, but after a possible takes and maybe even a rook to e1, threatening a lot of stuff here with queen h3, for example, is one idea, or even g4. This just looks very scary, and this is not something I'd want to go into. Rather, I just take back, and knight takes on e4. And again, it looks like I'm just losing here, but turns out this position I looked at carefully is even. This position is Yeah, a draw. Computers, right? They'll find the craziest draws. So I play king e7. This is actually losing for black. But what happens if we play king e5? Well, it turns out the best that white can do is a draw because we are attacking the knight, and otherwise we're going to play moves like queen d4, and we're going to get a large amount of development in. But okay, king e5, queen g7 check, so sacrificing the knight. However, after rook e1, they win our queen, and in this position, we're only up 1 point in material, and for the most part, this is just pretty much even because this rook is tied down to the pawn, and this rook can't move because it's defending this rook. So, yep, computers, I know, crazy, but yeah, this is an even position. So, that's pretty wild, but okay. There are some other things we should ask ourselves about, like what if after takes and check, what if we move over? The thing is, we shouldn't really do this because queen to e5 check and rook to e4 will be checkmate. So that is something I wanted to get out of the way for you guys, just in case if you were curious. But okay, knight takes e4, king e7. This is losing, and the reason why is kind of surprising, but also kind of not. Essentially, there's queen to h4 in this position, where after f6, they can just move their rook to either e1, or they can just play certain moves that just threaten our position. Specifically, rook e1 would be really good here, but they didn't play this, and the problem is it's hard to tell exactly what to do here, because if we move away, for example, here, queen h7, and we're forced to move back, but it's just a very uncomfortable position for us, and there's not really one specific thing we can do. And for example, if king d7, trying to go into similar lines, the problem is they have a knight as well. They're not just queen versus two rooks, it's queen and knight versus two rooks. And they have a lot of advantages because of that. For example, they can actually probably take on f6 because they just can. After this, king e1, and they're just, even if rook takes c2 or rook takes g2, this knight will be very good with the queen and will be able to coordinate and probably win one of the rooks at the very least. But this is undoubtedly winning for white. But okay, instead they played knight takes c5, but it kind of let me get into the game a little bit. After rook h8, now that they're not attacking f6 anymore, I can finally move that rook and finally scooch my king over to g7. Rook e1, king f7, queen to b4. I played queen to d6, and I think queen to d6 makes a lot of sense. But it might not be the best try here. The unfortunate part is after queen to d6, we will see certain moves that benefit our opponent. Rather, a move like queen to d5 would be just a little bit stronger, just covering the b3 square, as we will see, will be necessary for the game. So queen to d6, it's a very tempting move because there's no discoveries against our queen, even though our queen is undefended, and we're technically pinning their knight to their queen. But let's see what happens, and we will actually in the game. Queen to b3, king g7, and knight e6, and now white is pretty much winning, or close to it. After king h7, they played the wrong move, and we get the advantage again. But after queen to f3, they attack f6, and we can't really defend it well. Because what do? If queen e7, knight g5 check, we lose the queen. And f5, well, just knight g5, and you know they get the g5 square for their knight. This has to be okay. Even h3, a prophylactic move against threatening queen h2. But there's a lot of issues here, and surprisingly, there's not much you can do. So realistically, the best option is to probably sacrifice the exchange here with something like rook to f8. But this is also just very, very sad to see, because, well, you just lost the exchange and you're down a pawn, and your king is definitely in a worse position. So kind of just lost it all for nothing. But queen h3, luckily, after king to g8, we kind of get out of the issues here somehow. Right, even though there's queen to b3 back, the problem is there's queen takes h2. So it's not really working the same anymore, which is nice for us. But okay, king to g8, queen to f3, now attacking f6. But after queen takes h2, well, we just took a much more important pawn, and with check, king f2, queen h4, king f1, queen to c4 check, and queen takes c2. Queen takes c2 isn't so great. It offers chances for white, but I don't see anything practically wrong with this move. The thing is that it's a little scary because this rook is also still hanging, so every move does have to come with check here. But luckily, I found this queen f5, and after this, don't play g5 because queen takes a8 will be a very sad position. But rook c8, and then g5 is coming. But g4 first, queen to c5 check, king to g2, queen to c7. Now if the knight moves, then we have rook to h2. But they actually let me play rook h2 because I guess they just assumed that I didn't have anything. And realistically, there's not an immediate win with rook to h2, but knight to h6 is interesting. The problem with this move is it does let me trade and get into a position where it's just an endgame with rook h2. And after takes, the problem is if they take with the queen, then I can just go check. So take with the queen, check, and we'll just rook to c2 actually, we'll just win the queen. But if they take with the king, then it's just a similar issue where I can actually just pretty much trade queens. So king f1, and then queen takes g6 would be winning as well. So that's actually what happened in the game, is queen c2 and queen takes g6. So now I'm just up a full rook. There's not really too many issues here. Going back, if we just look at things, unfortunately this queen c2 is just too strong here, and it is essentially losing material knight g6, very surprisingly, but it's very concrete. And after king f1, queen takes g6, queen d5, queen f7, we're up a rook, so if we can just force the trade of queens, then this is a pretty easily winning game. And this is exactly what happens with queen c2 check. And after takes, rook c2, king g4, king f7, just improving our king, why not? And then we take the two pawns, take the last pawn, and then promote. And this is exactly what happens. And checkmate. So we ended up winning game number 5 after one of the most difficult defeats I've had in tournament play. But this was definitely one of the craziest games that I've ever had as well, because things were all over the place the entire time. Just what an insane game, right? My king was in the center of the board. I absolutely should not have won this game. I was actually losing at certain points, but luckily I did come back and I was able to win, as my opponent did not find a good way to target my weaknesses, specifically the f6 pawn. Going back here, f6, queen f3, attacking f6 would have been a huge improvement for my opponent. And anything I take away from this game, it's very difficult to take one specific thing away. But if we take away anything, I would say, surprisingly, play king e5. Bring your king to the center of the board, right? Develop your king. That's not really good advice, because that's not general stuff that you should think about. So it's not really a good option, or a good thing to advise to people. But if I were to advise anything, be careful with your king side. Be very careful. Make sure you're not allowing anything from your opponent. This was completely unnecessary stuff to allow, though it still worked out for me somehow. But I would say just be cautious of your king side. And I hope you guys have good luck with your following tournament games if you take this advice to heart, because you should be very wary of king side attacks. But anyways, now I am 3 out of 5 in this tournament. We still have 2 games left. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in game number 6.